I've been involved in a potential joint venture deal for our company. The possibility for this joint venture came up through an acquaintance, a friend's friend. Let's call him Tony. His boss and my boss both were enthusiastic to have an initial call, but it took me over 3 weeks to try to pin down a date for the call with all of us. I wasn't asking for that meeting to happen soon. It could be any time in the future, but I really wanted to get a date down, so I didn't have the mental overhead of having to continually remind and chase. After countless back and forths, I finally was able to get a meeting in. The meeting went fine. We agreed we were going to go forward exploring next steps. I found the difficulty of getting Tony and his boss to schedule a time really difficult. I don't think it should take 3 weeks to get a date in the diary for something we both mutually wanted to happen. To me, it's unprofessional and maybe even kind of incompetent. It doesn't bode well for working together in the future. Also, my boss and I have discussed that our company doesn't really need this joint venture. We could very much develop the new product on our own. I think maybe I've given the impression that we want this partnership more than we actually do, because I just wanted to get the item of pinning a date down off my to-do list. How do I talk to Tony to explain that I don't want to be chasing for meetings like this, and that we really don't need this joint venture if it's going to be too complicated? He's also a friend's friend, so I really want to talk about this without sounding judgmental or critical.
So thanks for the question. This is a great example of an opportunity where you can transform an understandably frustrating experience that is often filled with a feeling of criticism and judgment of others, and turn this into a conversation centered around needs and values. So what you've experienced is that it took a really long time and a lot of chasing to get a meeting pinned down. And it's understandable to feel frustrated and judgmental about the situation. It's natural to think, well, they're disorganized, unprofessional, inconsiderate, incompetent. And it's very natural to have these judgments. When we respond judgmentally, it's because we have values and needs that are not being supported in a situation. To have a productive conversation with Tony, it's helpful to really focus on what are your values and needs in the situation. For example, you might have a value for efficiency and a need for mental space that comes from being able to complete straightforward organizational tasks, such as fixing dates in the calendar as soon as possible, so they don't burden you with unnecessary mental overhead. You'd perhaps also like clarity on what is the appropriate level of follow-up and chasing. On a practical note, in this situation, you did chase for this first meeting because you really wanted to get a meeting in because your boss had said that they would like to have one. You mentioned that you're not necessarily so keen, neither is your boss, to ensure that you need a second meeting because both of you are a bit undecided about whether you want to go forward. So you no longer need to feel the burden to chase in this situation. And so in this case, if you did want to say anything to Tony to mark this, you could say, I realize it might be tricky to get things in the diary for you with your boss, so I propose I'll wait for you to get back to us when you can find the time. Now that can also go without saying, and you can just wait for them to get back to you, of course. If it were a different situation where you very much wanted the meeting and you very much wanted to get something in the calendar, so then in that case, it is in your interest to chase someone. And if you were in a situation where you do need to chase someone, but you find it stressful and it's causing a mental burden, you can also acknowledge this and try to find a better way through this by saying something such as, I realize things are very busy and you might not get back to my first request. I'd like to know what a good timescale is for me to follow up as needed. And then you can work together with the other party to have a follow-up schedule for chasing that works for both of you. And then you can just go ahead and put the follow-up reminder in your calendar, and hopefully that will reduce the mental overhead. However, in your current situation, you've described that you don't necessarily need this second meeting, and also perhaps their ways of scheduling and their organization is indicating to you that a partnership might not be the most compatible thing after all. And what I hear is that you would also like to convey that perhaps you're not so sure about working together. And even if you were to work together on this, it's definitely something you'd like to give feedback on because you don't want to be dealing with this type of difficulty scheduling going forward. You can say something such as, I noticed that it took us several weeks to get a date down in the diary. The way our team works, we usually deal with organization things and get dates in the diary as soon as possible because we're under a lot of pressure to move quickly, and having uncertainty lingering about scheduling upcoming meetings adds a lot of mental overhead and reduces our effectiveness. Then you can mention the other issue about you're not so sure about how compatible you are for the joint venture. You can speak to the common purpose of wanting to only to proceed with a joint venture if you're compatible in your working styles. It'd be bad news and grief for everyone involved for you to have a joint venture if you're not compatible. So you can say, for both our sakes, I'd like to only proceed with the venture if it works well and we have compatible working styles. I know different organizations prioritize different things and work to different rhythms and timescales. And it's quite important to have compatibility in terms of timescales, working patterns, and how we communicate, because I've noticed that otherwise these projects can fail and go quite badly. This way, you've transformed your judgments of them being perhaps incompetent or inconsiderate into your needs for efficiency, expediency, compatibility. You're highlighting the truth that it is for the common good of both of you to only continue on the joint venture if your working styles are compatible for both parties.